let's look at party structure.
That's what
Now,
it said.
the previous guest made mention of party structure not supporting active participation of women in politics. Now, let's look at that. Whether it's a woman who is running for office or it's the youth, the party structure or the structure of political parties in Nigeria. What is your take with regards enabling or enhancing democratic process?
I think the political culture in Nigeria is still very underdeveloped, as it were. A lot of the things that we see happen around us in Nigeria today, especially in the historical development of political parties, suggest that we have really not been able to evolve that culture that supports a vibrant democracy. That is the real challenge. But you need to really understand from what political scientists refer to as political culture, those sets of basic values, attitudes, that of course people have toward their political system. Now, if those values and attitude that people hold toward the political system are still not well developed, it will be very difficult for you to actually see this level of participation that you to speak of. Gabriel Almond and Sidney Verbal in their very seminal book, The Civic Culture, says there are three levels of political culture. The first being the parochial culture, the second being the what it calls the subject culture, and then the last being the participant culture. And they said that the parochial culture is where citizens feel that they really don't mean so much, and they cannot actually affect the decisions that come through the political party. And I think we are still very parochial and rudimentary in terms of our understanding of what political parties really are. And I think this is the issue that we really need to develop. Earlier on this morning, Femi mentioned, the likes of Obafemi Awolowo, the likes of Nnamdi Azikiwe in their 30 were participating very significantly in the political process in Nigeria. Nobody gave it to them. They took it by themselves. There was no elder who was there to determine who was going to be party leader. They took the bulls by the horn because they were self-aware. And I think this is what is actually lacking in our youth and in our women today, that many of them don't see themselves and they are waiting for somebody who wants to serve them power a la carte. And I think that can happen. What will make our political discourse robust is you see people, young people, women who are self-aware, and they have to play deeply into the political game. There is nothing in our political evolution that says women cannot take on very critical role in political party structure, but except that they have consigned themselves to the bottom rung of the ladder, and all that they can get for the women is women leader, and you have youth leader. And I think that is not what it should be. They should be ready to see themselves as participant, active participant in the process, and be ready to contribute both materially, ideologically, to the formation and the development of political parties and institutions in Nigeria.
Let's look at the present political, or when it comes to party structure in Nigeria. We maintain what we call the multi-party system. Unlike in the past where you have two-party system, in 1993 you have the SDP and the NRC, and thereabout it has changed to multi-party system. Now, talk to us the merit and the demerit of having multi-party system in Nigeria, if that has really helped our political system or not.
Well, I think, like they say, the more the merrier. Multi-party system is actually very, very significant for a stable and a viral democratic practice. In other words, that the people and the citizens have so many options from which to make a choice from. Don't forget that democracy is about choice making, and that people come together based on their various views, based on their various interests, and then they are able to aggregate it around their political institution. And I think the problem that we have had in this country, especially in the evolution of party system, is that many people think that, of course, until you play at the center, that you are not very significant. You know, when we look at party structure and formation, for example, in the United States, a lot of people feel that America is a two-party state, but that is not really very true, because you have a lot of political parties in America that may not be playing at the center, but they are very active at the mayoral level, and they can win election there, and they can show their competence. So even America, by practice, is also a multi-party democracy of a sort, although there are two basic parties that are known. Same is happening in the UK and some other advanced economies. You see, the real issue here is not about whether the structure of the parties are right or wrong. The issue here is that we as citizens, we must first of all understand that we have a stake in the nation. And two, we must be able to articulate and aggregate our interests around political institutions. And then, of course, that leads to the formation of political party. What we have seen in time past is that we have not seen a natural evolution of a political party. All you see is that people have set up this process and it becomes people to come and join. And they are not joining on the basis of even their own particular interest, because what political party means to us in this part of the world is just access to power. And then when you have power, you have everything. And once we have those kind of views about politics, it will be very difficult for us to be democratic, even in the terms of contesting or contestations of electoral offices.
Taking into cognizance our diversity, so how does ethnic and regional dynamics affect political party culture and even affiliations?
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. Parties are formed around interests. So when people who have same interests come together, naturally to say, well, we have aggregated our interests, and this is the sum total of it. And then they develop that platform to push those ideals, which is, of course, some called ideology. You see, but because what has happened in the political history of Nigeria is that we have restricted ourselves basically to this idea of either you are a socialist or you are a capitalist. But I think it's far more than this, that what political party ought to do is to help people aggregate and put together their viewpoints on the things that matters to them. And on the basis of that, they can form a political party. So if it is ethnic consideration that is important to you, for example, you can actually aggregate around it. But what that means is that if you are going to do election, you already know where your geography is, that it cannot be national. So which means all that concerns you is to see what to do with political power within your jurisdiction, where, of course, you have similar viewpoint. Now, but if you want to play and cut across your ethnic divide, then, of course, you must have a political party that spreads to the other part. You see, but some of the legislation today that we are having, take, for example, you look at our electoral law, where the law says, oh, God, before you can play, you must have a national spread. Those things are not necessary. They should be natural, that people should just be able to understand that, look, I am coming to play politics, and they know where they can win elections and where they cannot win elections based on the interests that they represent. And I think this is what we really need to understand about party politics.
All right, let's look at this issue of independent candidacy. There are some political gladiators who argue that Nigeria has come of age and there's a need to provide or make provision for independent candidacy. Do you subscribe to that thought?
Yeah, this for me should really be just natural with INEC. What that means is that you are looking at it from the point of view that if I, as Idahosa, want to play in politics, and I don't subscribe to the ideals of the existing political parties, I should be given free expression to participate. You may not even know as those numbers of people or citizens whose views may align or whose interests may co-terminate with my interest. So I think we must be liberal enough to remove all the constraints and hindrances in terms of party formation. They should be allowed to evolve naturally. People of interest must come together and aggregate themselves and put those structures in place. And those who don't believe in the views, in the ideals of existing parties should be allowed to go to the polls and test their popularity. And you see, this is where the real challenge is for us, because we believe that everybody who contests must contest on the basis of political party. But I think democracy, especially liberal democracy, has grown beyond this. And America has been able to exemplify this, that of course, as independent, you can go around and contest elections. And if it is possible, you can win and get into office.
Okay, talking about contesting for elections, let's look at primary elections, which are held at the party level. How crucial is this in the kind and quality of candidates that are presented to the electorates?
Yeah, I think primary elections are also very critical, because what this really means is that it gives you the opportunity to actually present the very best amongst you to represent you in the context, the national context, for example, or the state context, wherever that election is happening. So you do your primary to select who your candidate should be, really. And of course, these, ought also to be very democratic. In other words, you also give freedom for people to participate. And I think this is the real challenge that, of course, Nigeria has had over the years, that we don't have internal democracies. That political parties' primaries, political parties' congresses are hijacked and manipulated by the warlords in those political parties. And they take it all over and determine who gets which office, when and how. And once you hijack the process and you are not allowing it to be free, to really give birth to who should be the national person that everybody will support, at the end of the day, what do you get? You get intra-party squabbles. And this is what we have seen over the years. And you remember, some people had even argued, I remember the former president Buhari saying that the undoing of the PDP in the last election was because they could not be able to wrap their hand around all the internal squabbles that, of course, push Kwankwaso out and will be on the other side, giving the freedom or the opportunity for APC to have a sweet right to victory. Now, this is what you have when you do not allow internal democracy, where you are not giving people the freedom to determine who to vote for or who not to vote for. And these are the challenge that we must have to deal with going forward if we must have a virile and a strong democratic practice culture.
Let's look at the influence of godfathers. We're talking about godfatherism, which you can't do without it. It happens. But what can be done to ensure that we reduce the influence or the grip that godfathers have on political structure, whereby sometimes elections look like selections?
Yeah, of course, you can't take that away from even democracy itself. No matter how much we say democracies are free, you find that there are some people who are very, very powerful within the system, and they are able to actually influence the outcome of the election. That is depending on who they are. Today, we talk about influencers in the social media. It's just having one influencer. If he has the opportunity to say you are linked up with an influencer, there's a likely tendency that if he champions a cause for you, a lot of people are going to support that view. So we have that happens. And of course, again, in political parties, they're like a gatekeeper who are able to actually really aggregate and put together what the interest of the party is and say, this is the focus, this is what we believe in, and the things we work around. And they have a lot of support base that people who believe in them, people who believe in their judgment, and they feel that these people can help. And then, of course, they can actually push candidacy. This happens everywhere in the world, even including the most developed democracies like America. So you find that you have a political family where you have strong man who is strong enough to actually influence the outcome of your primaries. But I think this should end at the point of mentorship, really helping people to get into how to determine, but it should not move beyond elections, that after elections, such a person will undermine the office of whoever is elected to whichever office is elected to and begin to determine the pace of which policies and decisions are made. Now, mentoring for me is not a big deal, but when it becomes like having somebody as a stooge, it becomes very detrimental to the practice of democracy.
All right, let's look at factionalism in parties. We've seen this happen a lot of times in Nigerian politics, where even primaries are held by one political party, and you have this faction conducting their own primary, the other faction conducting their own primary. How does things like this impact the electoral process?
Yeah, that's what I've spoken to, because when you have a party system that is not really very matured, is not well developed, you find this happen from time to time. You see, because the whole essence of politicking in Nigeria is all about state capture. And this is where the real challenge lies for us as a people. So you see, people have no ideas. There are no ideology, no philosophy of any kind governing the organization. So you find strange bedfellows come together in the form of political association, and all they are interested in is how to capture the power of the state. This is the problem. So when you have these strange bedfellows come together to form an association, it will not take a time before they start to disagree. So because what is at stake here is not a common interest of a group, it's individual interest. So it becomes very difficult to manage these differences. But what you see that has led into in the time past is that it usually gives opportunity to less popular, least prepared candidates to win elections. And I think this is very important, that people must understand that taking a party ticket is not as important as living your ideal and governing the space where you are contesting for. So we must be able to take this, that you don't need to be the president to actually contribute. All you need to be is that this is our interest, this is what I am representing, this is what I want our party to do, this is the area where we want our parties to play, and this become real guiding principle for you as a party man. Now, this is what is missing in our environment, because all that we are looking for, like I said, is the capture of state power.
Talking about strengthening internal democracy, what should be the role of party constitutions, rules, code of conduct? And then let's also look at the role the federal constitution will play in this. Which one is supreme, the party constitution or the federal constitution? And how can that be, used or deployed in strengthening internal democracy within political parties?
Yeah, of course, what makes us a country is our constitution. That's the grand norm of the nation. And that supersedes every other law, every other regulation, every other act that anybody can make. So if you have a party constitution, for example, that is at variance or is contrary to the national constitution, to the extent of that variance, that constitution or act is null and void, because it does not supersede the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That must be taken in first. You see, but constitutions are just mere guide to determine how people should play, or the rule to play by. But the real challenge here we have seen over time in Nigeria, especially as we look at the evolution, the historical evolution of political parties, is that many people even violate their party constitutions. This is a real challenge. And it's not just the party constitution, even the national constitution. So many people have the rules written, but we don't have the courage to play by the rules. And this is a problem, because power becomes so expedient for us that every other thing becomes secondary. And I think this is where we need to really work on, because the real power that strengthens or drives democracy is the rule of law. That people are playing by the rule. They understand what the Constitution says, and they are willing to obey and live by the terms of the Constitution. Now, once people understand this requirement, then every other thing will be a given in democratic practice.
So what is the role of INEC as the electoral umpire in ensuring compliance of political parties with electoral laws?
Well, I think the laws are also very clear on the role INEC should play in this regard. INEC is an umpire. It's just like a referee. He doesn't play in the match. And as a referee, all you do is to play by the rule of the game. Every game is guided by rules and regulations. And to the extent that people are deviating from the rules that govern the game, all that the referee will need to do is to sound a whistle. And that's what INEC should do. Look at those who are contesting elections, the political party, and see whether they comply with the extant laws of the land. And to the extent of that compliance, you can either admit or disqualify them from contestation. This is the role of INEC. It should be an unbiased umpire to look at the participation vis-a-vis the laws of the land that governs the participation itself.
All right, let's look at the manner at which we play opposition in this climb compared to the other climb. Playing opposition here looks more like antagonism, rather than sharing of ideas or providing alternatives to what the government of the day is offering. What should be the ideal when it comes to parties playing opposition?
Well, like you say, in warfare, politics is a warfare where, of course, you have to deploy whatever that is within your reach to pull your opposition down. So propaganda becomes part of the norm of the political contestation. But you see, the big problem we are having here today really is that we don't have a deep political culture where people really have to focus on winning elections. What you see happen around our space is that immediately a winner emerges after a national election. The opposition, they go into the cooler until another election cycle. And this is not healthy for democracy. Now, in most advanced democracies of the world, opposition form shadow governments to put the governing party to check. So if you, for example, APC had won this election, the general election in Nigeria, the other opposition party don't need to wait till 2027 before they can start mobilizing. As a matter of fact, they should also set up their kitchen cabinet, which of course they call shadow cabinet, to be able to review the public policies of this regime and then be able to use them as basis to discredit the governing party against the next election cycle. And this is what it should be like. But unfortunately, you find that all that we're all interested in is just how to win election. And this is why you find that even cabinet formation is a problem for us, because we have not developed this political culture that enable us to play a very functional opposition. The kind of opposition we play today is dysfunctional. It's not healthy for democracy. When we see all that we do is just to see how to destroy the entire system, that won't work for anybody. What opposition should be doing is form a kind of what they call shadow government and have ministers in place so that when they are going to contest in the next election cycle, we will be rest assured of who their ministers are going to be based on what they're doing while they are not in power.
Okay, quickly before we go, we're looking at internal democracy in Nigeria from 1960 on to now, even though that democracy in Nigeria had a lot of times been truncated until 1999, where we've had sustained democracy in Nigeria. But looking at the party, political culture of the parties then and now, what are those things that seem to have been a problem that we still find today, or what they got right that need to be gotten right as well in this time?
I think I've alluded to that while we started this conversation. For us, some of us who are students of history, we have really not been able to shift from the foundation that were laid by our founding fathers. And most of the things that you see really today playing out in our politics were the same politics that were played by our founding fathers. While we give them kudos for pioneering independence for Nigeria, which was quite worthwhile, but we must not fail to also point to some of the issues that plague the republic. Take, for example, the build-up to independence. Nigeria actually had a one-party state until the death of Herbert Macaulay, for example. And immediately Herbert Macaulay died, the center of the Nigerian nationalistic movement could no longer hold. Because we saw that in 1951, there was no smooth transition who became the new leader of the NCNC. The Egba Omo-Oduduwa was formed and transformed into a political party in September of 1951 by late Obafemi Awolowo. And of course, the Northerners had no other option than to form MPC in December of 1951. And therefore, automatically, the vehicle that was carrying everybody toward independence, the NCNC, became an Igbo political party. That is how we came into the ethnic politics that we play today. It was actually started by these, our founding fathers. So what you see play out in our politics today, why for us is always our turn to take what is in government, actually that bedrock was laid by our founding father. And we must tell ourselves this simple truth. And this was what the first coup plotters actually were trying to fight. But unfortunately, ended up in doing the same thing that they thought that they were going to exterminate in our political, in the body of our body politics. So this is the real issue. So there's no significant difference or shift. Take, for example, when Action Group was founded, the sage, Obafemi Awolowo, was the presidential candidate and at the same time, the chairman of the party. And that was not a good governance structure. So this is the issue. And that also played out in 1978 when he founded the UPN. So you have these basic issues that the greed to take power started with them. And that greed is still what we are fighting today. As a matter of fact, I say to people, the problem we see in our politics today is the struggle for power between Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Sardauna of Sokoto, Ahmadu Bello. This struggle between these three personalities, we have not been able to overcome it, even as a nation, as we speak today.